Hey, this is Chris from Rekkid Talk, and so I'm going to start a new series. I think the one about bands I've seen live or haven't seen live, I've been doing for several weeks on Monday, is kind of played out. So I'm going to start a new Monday series. This will probably be the next 5 Monday episodes. And again, this is something I've seen other people do where they've done an album for every year in their life. So I'm going to chop it up into decades. So the first one will be my first decade of life, which will be the 1970s. We also have a 1969 because I was born in 1969. But an episode about the 60s would be me showing one record. So I picked these records. I started off on Wikipedia. I was trying to find records that were made right around my birthday in late August. Some years I got pretty close, some years I went a little bit farther away. I've also made a rule that I'm not going to use any artist more than once throughout this series 69 through 2021. So let's get into it. So representing 1969 will be Then Play On, which is this early Fleetwood Mac record. And so for this episode, we're going to see a lot of vinyl. A lot of this vinyl is going to come from my dad's collection. Um, and so a lot of it is going to be reflective, probably more of his musical taste than my musical taste per se. I've never actually really been much into the early era of Fleetwood Mac. I'll admit that my Fleetwood Mac listening is usually Buckingham Nicks era. Now, the 1970 album, this is an album that was never in my parents' collection. Black Sabbath Paranoid. So for me, I didn't discover Black Sabbath until the early 80s, and that would have been when Dio was in the band. The Heaven and Hell, and I think Mob Rules was probably the first Black Sabbath album I ever heard. And at that point in time, Ozzy was, well, he was doing like the Blizzard of Oz and that sort of stuff. But then it was kind of, oh yeah, you're learning, oh yeah, he was in a band in the 70s called Black Sabbath, and they scared people. Um, my 1971 album is Al Green Gets Next to You. And I've been to Al Green's church. Probably, it's probably been close to 20 years ago. There was a friend who was getting married. We had sort of the bachelor's weekend in the Memphis area. So we went to the casino. And then on Sunday, we went to the church. They've got, obviously, world-class choir. They've got a good musical system. You can tell who are the real parishioners and who are the tourists. So you put some money in the collection plate, and it's like paying for a concert. 1972, I'm going to represent with David Bowie, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. So again, I was probably more introduced to Bowie. I don't really remember Bowie from the 70s so much. I remember him probably first from the early 80s, and then again, somebody you would work backwards on. I think for pretty much almost all of us, that there's always going to be some artists that are that way that you got into either because of your age or just that being a type of music you didn't follow, you would discover later on. 1973. Now, I recently bought this album from the Record Crate, but this is something the folks did have in their collection, and I remember it. And I remember thinking those keyboards were cool when I was a kid. So, Herbie Hancock Headhunters. So, very jazz fusiony here. 1974, we're going to represent with Bonnie Raitt's Streetlights. And again, this is probably more on the lines of this is more my dad's taste in music than my taste in music per se. I don't have anything against Bonnie Raitt, but this isn't something I personally listen to a lot. 1975, we're going to represent 1975 with some Grateful Dead, Blues from Allah, which came out right around my birthday in 1975. There are the guys. This is a pretty new looking copy because I got this in the box set that I picked up recently. 1976, ZZ Top Tejas. This was a recent miracle. Found this for $1. Sort of purchase. I don't think my parents ever had this one, but I know they had some older ones. I know they had Tres Hombres because I remember the Mexican food picture, but I never got that one. So ZZ Top Tejas representing 1976. 1977, we'll do some more jazz fusion-y sort of stuff. We'll represent 1977 with Jean-Luc Ponty. I mean, he just looks like a dude from 1977 in this picture here. And so that's going to be 1977. My parents didn't have punk rock records, so that stuff was discovered by me later. 1978. So this is going to be the first year that's going to be represented with records that I bought at the time. And so we're going to represent 1978 with half of the Kiss solo records. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, because these are the only two of the 4 solo albums that I ever bought. And so I was into Kiss when I was a kid. I mean, I had Love Gun, I had Destroyer, I had these two. I think those are the only 4 I ever owned, and these are the only 2 that survived from my childhood collection. And I'll be honest, Kiss isn't a group that as an adult I'm really looking to collect. My understanding is a lot of people actually think that the Ace Frehley is the best of the solo records, and I never got that one. I did hear that the Peter Criss one was the worst of the batch, and I don't have that one. And finally, 1979, we're going to have a very 80s band on a very 80s format. Susie and the Banshees join hands. So it was probably 10 years. It was probably the late 1980s before I discovered Susie and the Banshees, and I got this cassette used at the indie record store in my college town. Look, he wrote Susie and band join on top of it in a Sharpie. I don't know why he did that. I'll be honest, this isn't anywhere near my favorite Susie and the Banshees record, but I'm going to represent the coming 80s with a tape cassette rather than vinyl. And so next Monday, I'll do this with albums from 1980 through 1989. That's basically going to cover me from late elementary school into being an undergraduate in college. The 70s basically covered my childhood.